The Ukrainian intelligence acknowledges that there are Russians, including from the closest circle of Putin, who do talk with them. And while all of them might have their own personal reasons, they are united by the common goal, which is to prevent Putin from making the situation even worse. And at the same time, around 20,000 special Ukrainians in the east are determined to stop the Bakhmut insanity. But more about all of this in just a couple of minutes. What's up, investors? It's the Russian dude. And let's go straight to the point and see some most recent footage. And today, we once again begin with ridiculous Russian propaganda. Right here we have Olga Skabeyeva, who is with all seriousness saying that Ukrainian soldiers, before going to the front lines, they donate their biological material, and then this will be used to recreate perfect Ukrainian soldiers with an increased level of hatred toward Russians. And according to her, whenever Russia inevitably wins in this war, this will be the generation of Ukrainians which will revenge their fathers. And I mean, okay, I guess. Because then we have another ridiculous statement by the Russian propaganda, which says that approximately 79% of the Russian people, they approve the work of Putin, and about 83% they like him as the president of Russia. And to be honest, I think those people who believe these statistics are pretty much the same people who believed the previous genetically modified Ukrainian soldiers, because pretty much not a single friend of a relative that I have back in Russia ever received polls like this, so I have no idea where they get these statistics. Next we go to another Russian propagandist, Marina Simonyan, who is talking about the events in Georgia, and what she basically says is that this time no one will be playing around these protests, and in case there is a danger to Russia, Russia will just simply attack, or I mean even nuke Georgia if needed. And I mean, it kinda sounds familiar whenever they're also claiming that, Kyiv will fall in just 3 days, Russia is so powerful. And now they make the similar statements about Georgia. And speaking about the protests in Georgia, recently in the second reading of the bill about the foreign agents, this bill has been completely cancelled, and this whole meeting took only 40 seconds. Which just once again shows the people of the other countries that people do have the power and they can influence the decisions of the government, and it might take as little as even less than half week. Because just as an example how ridiculous this foreign agents law can be, which is active in Russia, recently it acknowledged that the World Wildlife Fund is a foreign agent. And I have no idea how the Russian authorities connected the dots between wild animals and the Russian government or the Russian military. And I mean, to be honest, now I kinda can see it. But to be honest, maybe what they realized is that the World Wildlife Fund decided to give money to lions and tigers instead of like donkeys and monkeys. And then the Russian authorities like, wow, we are being discriminated here. And I guess, yeah, if you got this low quality cringy joke, okay, can you please, I guess, like this video and subscribe to my channel, because it does help a lot. You can also check out my second channel, The Russian Dude Clips, where I post under 1-minute summaries. The link will be down below. But okay, let's quickly get back to some serious news before I talk about the situation in the south and the east of Ukraine. The first one is that Norway, with cooperation with the United States, will send 2 additional NASAMS air defense systems to Ukraine. The second news is that the diversion group, allegedly from the Freedom of Russia Legion, has set on fire one of Russian fighter jets, Su-27, located in Vladivostok, all the way on the eastern side of Russia. I do have a video of this incident and it will be available on my Patreon, the link is down below. And the third news is that Ukrainians were able to find a so-called guidebook on the body of a perished Russian soldier, which basically says that in case you are captured or in case there is some kind of incident, you must present yourself as a part of Wagner group, not as a part of the Russian military, which basically implies that the confrontation between the common Russian army and Wagner group only increases. Alright, and as promised, let's talk about the situation in the east and south of Ukraine. And first of all, if you remember from a couple of episodes ago, Russians are building extensive fortifications and digging big long trenches along Crimean Peninsula, which can be as long as 200 kilometers so far. And well, according to the Russian infiltrator in Crimea Sergei Aksyonov, he said that yes, these are the fortifications against the possible attack by Ukrainians. But just in case, in the most likely case scenario, in case this is not happening, yes, these are his words, he said that this will be just become a touristic objects. There will be like kids playing and the people will be taking pictures in this, so this is just for touristic purposes. Another excuse of Russians to justify their fear of an upcoming Ukraine's counteroffensive. Then we go to the east of Ukraine, where according to the report by the Institute for the Study of War, Russians continue their offensive along Kupiansk, Svatove, Kreminna front line. And as you can see from this map, Russians were pushed further away to the south of Ploshanka. Going more to the south, we can see that Russians advanced a little bit further to the northwest of Belohirivka. As we go to the west, we can see that Russians took a little bit more of this road under their control. But according to Ukrainian sources, they were able to destroy a Russian mortar firing team in Dubovo-Vasilievka. Going more to the south, Ukrainians were also able to destroy a concentration of a Russian manpower advancing to the east of Bogdanivka. And then right here is the first-person combat footage of Ukrainians defending their positions along Seversky Donetsk river. The full video is about 2.5–3 minutes long, and the guy is shooting from his rocket launcher several times, which obviously YouTube might not like. For this reason, I uploaded the full version on my Patreon as well, where there is still 1 week of free access, and you can find all the useful links down below if you want to experience it for yourself. And as you go to Bakhmut area itself, we can see that Russians did a very minimal gains in the last 3–4 days. The first one is to the north of Khromove, and then they moved closer to Bakhmutivka river. They also tried attacking to the south of Ivanovsk, but all of these assaults were successfully repelled by Ukrainians. And in Bakhmut itself, one of the last standing remaining objects, the monument to MiG-17, is now also demolished. According to once again the same report by the Institute for the Study of War, Russians continue their advancement in Bakhmut area, but they were not able to achieve the turning point or achieve any significant progress. It is even mentioned that Wagner right now is very close to its culmination, and it is very unclear whether they will be able to cross Bakhmutivka river and finalize the capture of the city. In support of this, we have the statement from the Ukrainian side by Serhiy Chervatый, who is saying that Ukrainians were able to inflict significant damages to Wagner private military company, a lot of soldiers have been eliminated, and pretty much right now it is being replaced, slowly but surely, by common Russian army. And you know what? Even Prigozhin himself, he mentions that he does see the evidence and the tendency that Ukrainians will be launching their counteroffensive aiming to retake Bakhmut. And most likely what he refers to are those 4 brigades of special Ukrainian soldiers which we were talking about previously, and are located in Seversk, Slavyansk, Konstantinovka and Chasiv Yar, with the only purpose for them will be to retake Bakhmut. The total number of people estimated to be in these 4 brigades is approximately 20,000 people, and most likely as soon as they are feeling ready, most likely after receiving the Western military vehicles, they will begin their liberating crusade against Bakhmut. Even the advisor to the President of Ukraine, Mikhailo Podolyak, he also acknowledged that most likely Ukraine's counteroffensive will begin in approximately 2 months or less. He also claims that Ukraine needs to wait until Western military equipment, and in the meantime Ukraine is not that much in rush. They are reorganizing, relocating troops and preparing strategic strategically to do this offensive. Another statement that Mikhailo Podolyak made is that this season will be very hot in Crimea, kinda implying that Ukraine might do simultaneous counteroffensive across different multiple front lines. And the most probable directions will be in the east of Ukraine and also in Zaporozhye region, targeting the city of Melitopol, which is, as it's called, the key to Crimea. And what it basically means is that whoever controls this city controls the major logistical hub in the south, with the roads which also lead directly into the peninsula. But wait, there is more. The president of France, Emmanuel Macron, during his meeting with the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Rishi Sunak, they both pledged the support to Ukraine in its near upcoming counteroffensive. And I mean, if the Western countries are no longer afraid to so openly speak about supporting Ukraine against Russia, it means only one thing, that they're very confident that Ukraine will win. And the Russian authorities, they understand it as well, that the counteroffensive is coming and they can no longer wait. And so what they think they need right now is to get more people into the army. But instead of announcing another partial mobilization, probably they came up with another solution. And this solution is to announce the country-wide campaign about the recruiting of professionals into the army under a contract. According to the Western and Ukrainian sources, the Russian Ministry of Defense will require at least 400,000 more people, and the preparations for this campaign already started back in February. And what makes it different from a partial mobilization is that instead of forcing people to go into Ukraine, they'll be looking for those so-called volunteers who will be also forced into Ukraine. So pretty much nothing will change, except that those Russian soldiers will be called professionals under the contract. We even have some other yet unverified statements, but I still just wanted to let you know about them, is that Russia is considering to move its decision-making center away from Moscow, because of how dangerously close it is to Ukraine. This statement originally came to us from one of the closest oligarchs to Putin, Oleg Deripaska. And what he claims is that Putin, along with his inner circle, might move away from Moscow for different reasons. The first one is already above mentioned security, because Moscow is relatively close to the borders with Ukraine and the Ukrainian drones might potentially reach this city. The second reason is corruption related, because in case they decide to switch the capital, at least temporarily, to another city, they will need to make it a capital, which means building a lot of new buildings, roads, and basically stealing from the budget. And the third reason is politically related, to pretty much protect the power of Putin. The people in Western Russia, specifically in major cities such as Moscow and St. Petersburg, are becoming way too smart for the liking of the Russian authorities. Why does it matter? Well, it is much more complicated to brainwash a person who actually traveled the world and who has access to some Western medias and Western resources. And so if you move further away from them, you can start once again building this circle of fully devoted people towards your public persona. And so, if among these three reasons why the decision-making center is supposed to move away from Moscow, if the main reason from this one is the corruption related, it does feel like that Putin, he just wants to buy the loyalty, yes, loyalty of his inner circle. Previously, it has already been mentioned that the decision of Putin to invade Ukraine back in February of the last year, it was pretty much made by himself, and only a selected few group of people, no more than like 3 or 4, knew about the decision. While the rest of Putin's inner circle and his oligarchs, just like us, they only learned that he did take this decision pretty much in the morning of that day. They 100% were confused and they felt like being betrayed, because Putin did not ask their opinion, which in their understanding means that Putin does not respect them and does not value their input. And because of this, moving forward, the Ukrainian intelligence acknowledges that there are Russian authorities, including the closest people to Putin from his inner circle. They are cooperating with Ukrainian authorities against this Putin's regime. This information came to us from Andriy Chernyak, and he's saying that most of these people, they just pursue their own personal goals. That is why they don't care talking with Ukraine, because their own goals matter more. Some of them, they do it to save their lives, while the others, they try to protect their money, and the rest, they maybe just don't like what's going on. And I do have a list of 3 potential candidates from the Putin's inner circle who do cooperate with Ukraine, and some of them might come very unexpected. The first potential person is Yevgeny Prigozhin. He might hate talking to Ukraine, but he hates even more serving Putin. Because, at this point it is almost certain that the entire success of Russians in Bakhmut area was thanks to Wagner soldiers. And in the very beginning, Putin did show that he needs Prigozhin, which made him realize that potentially Putin might share some influence in the future. But as soon as Russians started to achieve some sort of success in the east, Putin said, that's it, I don't need you anymore, it was not your soldiers, it was the regular Russian army. Because then we even have this most recent statement by Prigozhin, who is saying that probably he might even make Wagner a private army, not a private military company. Because, if you do want to fight for power, you need to bring an army. The second person on this list is Oleg Deripaska, who just represents all the Russian oligarchs. Their entire motive is primarily financial, and all they care about is money. Whenever there is money, there is support, and as soon as money is gone, this so-called loyalty evaporates as well. And ultimately, the third person on this list, which is extremely close to Putin, but we might potentially have it as Dmitry Peskov. He feels like the hostage in this situation, and no, in no way I'm justifying his actions, but sometimes, just sometimes, the statements that he makes, it almost feels like that he is forced to say them. If right now he openly goes against Putin, he's a gone person, or maybe he will experience an unfortunate window accident. But if he stays on Putin's side, he'll be just delaying the inevitable for as long as possible. For this and many other reasons, he might be one of these people who is secretly talking to the Ukrainian authorities, because at least in their eyes, he wants to distance himself from Putin as much as possible. And so whenever the time comes and the things go south, his punishment, or at least as he hopes it, will not be as severe. Because, from time to time he does make kinda neutral statements, and it does feel like that he wants this war to be over as soon as possible. Such as, for example, in one of his most recent statements, he mentioned that there are smart and sensible people among Ukrainian authorities who can understand. And then he also added that Russia and Ukraine, they must cooperate and live together because these two countries are neighbors. These are just the 3 people that came to my mind, but almost certainly there must be way more Russian authorities and oligarchs who do talk to Ukrainians. They might have their own personal reasons for doing this, such as, for example, saving life, money, or just not liking Putin, but they're all united by the common goal. And for now, all of them, they just keep the low profile. But once again, at the earliest signs of Putin's weakness, his inner circle reaction and retribution will be swift and hard. And if you don't want to miss these potentially historic events, just please consider subscribing to my channel. It only takes 1 click. And if you want to support my work financially, please consider becoming my channel member, use a PayPal link, or become my Patreon, where there's still 1 week of free access. All these links will be found on the right and down below. Thank you so much for your attention, товарищи, and see you on Tuesday.